How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to episode number 33 of the Flight Time Podcast. This week, we're doing things a little bit differently. So if you usually listen to us over on YouTube, you probably are used to just seeing a stagnant background image. But this time, we're shooting video along with the podcast. You guys can actually see us talking. I think it's going to be a good addition to the podcast. So, really dependent on where you guys are listening to us, it's not going to matter. It's going to be the same subject matter. You aren't missing out on anything if you aren't going to be listening to us over on Spotify or over on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. But I figured that here for YouTube, where we've got a good amount of our people watching and listening to the podcast, we'd add this video element. So if you guys want to see that video element, come on over to YouTube and listen to us over there. Or if you guys are just going to be driving to work or doing whatever and you want to listen to us in the background, you guys can go ahead and continue to listen to us wherever you are listening to us at. So today, Ken, I want to discuss the Mavic Air 2. I think this is the drone to buy. There has been crazy things going on with this drone. The Mavic Mini, I think, hit like no other drone has. There's so many people buying that drone, and you think about everybody that DJI got into the drone industry with the Mavic Mini, everybody's now gonna just want to upgrade to the Mavic Air 2. So what are your thoughts on it?
I agree. I think with the Mavic Mini, I've seen people like I've never seen before interested in drones, and even more so now with the Mavic Air 2, I'm starting to see people that don't normally talk about drones or have never flown or even owned a drone considering, or they've already purchased their Mavic Air 2, and I've seen some people already got it in their hands. To me, it's a really interesting drone. Like I feel like it's really well rounded. Like for like everything we've talked about throughout the years, we always talk about like the perfect drone, right? I think this hits the most boxes, or it checks the most boxes, at least for me. What about you?
So I look at it this way, right? First of all, of course, once the drone comes out, you want to look at what it does on paper, the specs, the speed, the camera, the performance, the flight time, just all that stuff. You want to look at it. But then you sit back and you kind of look at it from a top-down view and say, how does this line up in the lineup of DJI drones, right? Or just in drones in general. But specifically speaking, it's a DJI drone. How does this line up in DJI's lineup of drones? You've got the Mavic Mini at 400. You've got the Mavic Air 2 at 800. And you've got the Mavic 2 Zoom at 1250 it is, I think.
Yeah,
and then
1250.
the Mavic 2 Pro is like 1500. So those drones have now dropped down to their original price that they first came out at before they then were hiked up in price by DJI. So you look at how this kind of stacks up with DJI's lineup. It's a little bit better than the Mini, and it's supposed to be a little bit worse than the Mavic 2 Pro, but we are seeing that this drone is pushing on the heels of the Mavic 2 Pro more than even the original Mavic Air did, and I feel like history is repeating itself. So the Mavic Air, when it came out, was really pushing against the original Mavic Pro because it's like, wow, for this value, why would I need to purchase the Mavic Pro? And even more right now, the Mavic Pro was $1,000, and now with a $1,500 Mavic 2 Pro, it's really hard to justify that crazy price tag when you have the Mavic Air and that it can do things better than the Mavic 2 Pro. I don't know. It's got me really excited for the future to see what DJI is going to do.
I love the form factor of the Air 2, and some people are mad that it's bigger than the original Mavic Air. But I don't really think of that as a disadvantage, because I think with a little bit more size, it does better in the wind, obviously, because I've heard of stories of the Mavic Minis just sort of like blown away with the wind. So to have a little bit heavier drone, I will sacrifice that. And then obviously to have the better battery life, because we're seeing hover times of 30 minutes, flight time of 34 minutes. And they were able to cram this all into a drone that's under 600 grams, which is really, really impressive.
Dude, I just think about it, right? And the difference between the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic Air 2, there's not much. I would say that there's three major things. You brought up a fourth thing earlier when we were talking. So first of all, it is only able to fly 42.5 miles an hour and not 45, so you're losing on 2.5 miles an hour of speed. It obviously doesn't have a 1-inch sensor, or it doesn't have 20 megapixels. Of course, the quad Bayer sensor gives you 48 megapixels, but we get a true 20 megapixel readout on that 1-inch sensor from the Mavic 2 Pro. You also don't have like the Hasselblad color science or that technology in the camera. You don't have dual IMUs in the Mavic Air 2, and you also don't have the obstacle avoidance sensors that the Mavic 2 Pro has. So you don't have the top sensors or the side sensors. And if you said to me that the camera with a 1-inch sensor and that the 2.5 miles an hour of speed and the extra IMU and the sensors are worth $700-800 to upgrade, I don't know, man. They are pushing on the heels of the Mavic 2 Pro so much, and it just has me excited to see what this brand new drone that DJI comes out with to replace that Mavic 2 Pro. Because right now, if I'm somebody and somebody's asking me which one do I buy, I'm gonna recommend the Mavic Air 2 9 times out of 10.
So let's think about, like, from our experience over the past, because we've had the Mavic 2 lineup in our hands for almost 2 years now. No, actually it's been 2 years. So I can tell you maybe on a handful of occasions I've used that top obstacle avoidance, and I can tell you that I've never used the side obstacle avoidance, because the only time that ever works is in tripod mode, and I've never found a reason to find myself in tripod mode, not ever. As far as the IMU, I really don't think of that as an issue. I think nowadays, like, technology, at least today, tech is so good that the failure rate of an IMU is probably very far and few between. And if you're really, really concerned about that singular issue, get insurance on your drone or put DJI Care Refresh on it, and make sure you always screen record your flights, so that way if something happens, you have some sort of, physical evidence of what gave way on the drone.
Yeah, I've got about, on certain drones, multiple days of logged flight time, right? And the amount of times I've had an IMU fail is 0. I've flown the Phantom, the Inspire, all the Mavics, the Spark. I've never had an IMU fail. The only time I've had like a critical failure is with an ESC, and luckily the drone was on the ground. And do they have backup ESCs? I don't know. Maybe they do, but the ESC failure wouldn't let me take off in this instance.
Right.
So in terms of the dual IMUs, I understand the reason that they're doing it, and I think that for these enterprise drones and the higher end drones, it's a no-brainer because they have the extra room to just fit another IMU in there. But where they're trying to cut costs and when they're trying to I guess, cram stuff into a smaller package, it's understandable why they would ditch the dual IMU. It's not something I'm going to miss. It's something I'll definitely cover in like videos once I've got my hands on the Mavic Air 2. But again, for the price point right now, I'm so impressed with it. Now let's talk about the controller, right? I've got the Mavic 2 Pro controller in my hand here, and they had this design for 4 years. They had this design since the original Mavic Pro, and I've always said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But in terms of what they're delivering with that Mavic Air 2 controller, it looks pretty good. It looks a lot like a dwarfed smart controller.
Yeah, I've heard people talk about the size, and they say it's a lot more comfortable in hand. I guess, I'm good with it. I never found myself using a tablet, ever with my Mavics, really ever. I did notice the smart controller, though, did get an update, and you can now install the DJI Fly app. So I'm wondering if we're going to be, I'm wondering if we're going to be able to utilize the smart controller with the Mavic Air 2, because if that's the case, that would be pretty cool.
That's huge. Another thing, and I can't believe that I'm even seeing this in a drone, OcuSync 2, or not in a drone, but in a Mavic Air, OcuSync 2, I am so surprised that they gave us OcuSync 2. I mean, I feel like maybe I could see them giving us OcuSync 1, but the fact that they're actually giving us what seems to be like an upgraded version of OcuSync 2 with a further range, that's something definitely to talk about, because there was a couple of issues with the original Mavic Air. Obviously, the sound of it, like the noise of the props, were just way too loud. And the Wi-Fi transmission system, it just wasn't that reliable. So now that you add OcuSync 2 into this drone, it makes it a much more viable option for somebody that's going to be using this for commercial work. I mean, you need a drone that you can rely on, and with Wi-Fi, you don't know if you're going to put that drone up and you're not going to be able to control it. So this opens it up to a lot more people, amongst other things like the really good flight time, the really good camera, which, let's talk about that camera, right? 48 megapixels. It's not true 48 megapixels. It's still got a 1/2-inch sensor, and they're using that quad Bayer sensor. So you want to take the time to kind of describe what that is really shortly?
I'll try. I'm gonna try. So quad bear, to my understanding, is that it takes to understand quad bear, you got to understand the way pixels work, and basically what it does, it interjoins pixels to make one larger pixel. It's really weird technology. So it's not actually that the sensor is a true 48 megapixels. It's that it's combined in pixels to create larger pixels, which in turn gives you a deeper resolution. If you really want to know about it, there's a lot of videos on the Samsung Galaxy S20, which utilizes a quad bear sensor. It's the same technology. So it's found in smartphones, and now it's made its way over to drone tech. It is cool, but it does have some limitations. You just got to know like what you're butting up against to. But I think what's cooler than even the 48 megapixel is the fact that we now have a true HDR on this drone.
Oh, dude, you know what? So with the Mavic 2 Pro, I utilized Hyperlight like crazy. It's so good for shooting in low light scenarios. And despite it not giving you a DNG file, it gives you a JPEG file to work with. And it does a lot of the processing on the drone itself or within the DJI Go application. But the thing about this new, smart capture feature that we have in the Mavic Air 2 is that it blends HDR and Hyperlight together, and it gives you a really clean looking image. And from what I've seen with Hyperlight, if they can make that better than it already is, I'm in. It's going to be so awesome.
How good is Hyperlight? Like I've found myself using it a lot lately.
It's so good.
It takes the guesswork out, because sometimes I'm like out at night and I'm like, I just want to get a shot, and I really don't want to have to fiddle with all the different shutter. I don't want to deal with that. So I just throw up Hyperlight, and Hyperlight does its thing. And I would say like a good 80% of the time I get the shot I want. Now, if I don't, there's no fixing it, and I got to take that shot again. But for the most part, it does great. Now, as far as HDR goes, the Mavic Air 2 offers it in video as well, which is really, really super impressive.
Yeah, HDR video is going to be great. And you know what? I feel like there's a lot of these companies that just slap HDR video into any camera. And it's not really the best. I mean, one example I'm thinking of is HDR video on the Skydio 2.
Yeah.
And like, if anything, when I look at the difference between the two, I just see that maybe it like cools the image down. I don't see a huge difference.
It's also a lot more saturated.
Yes, that. But what I think is that DJI has waited to put HDR video into their drones until they got it right. So I'm really excited to see the HDR photos and the HDR video that come off of this drone. And you know what? You've got to wonder, with Autel having 8K video, being able to push that because their camera shoots 48 megapixels, you got to wonder why DJI wouldn't go after that same marketing buzz and have a drone that shoots 8K video. Is it because the processor isn't powerful enough? Is it because they didn't want to kind of tease their consumers? And obviously, it can shoot 4K video, but once you get up to 8K and you kind of get into that whole quad bear sensor territory, so you got to wonder what their angle was on it. Regardless, man, I think that 4K is good enough, especially at 60 frames per second. But again, there's just, I wonder what the reason is behind that.
I have speculation as to why. I mean, if we look at the Mavic Air 2, it is not, I wouldn't say it's a professional. Like if you're a professional, you're probably looking at the Pro or something beyond, like maybe an Inspire. The vast majority of people that buy the Mavic Air 2 are your sort of hobbyists or people that are the casual people that want to buy it. Be able to fly enjoyably. 4K is plenty, more than enough. But not only that, it does take a little bit more to process that, and it does possibly have an impact on battery. I mean, the Autel Evo has a 7,500 milliamp hour battery.
I think it's 71.
It's 71.
7,100.
I'm staring at one on my desk. But still, like that's 4,000, almost 4,000, 2,800. We'll say 3,000 larger than this, which I mean is still coming in relatively close as far as flight time goes. So I think there's some compromises they had to make, but I think they also thought about it from a consumer standpoint. Like, what would a consumer really like use? Like, if we give them everything, what will they really use? So there's like no like leftover, you know what I mean? Like there's no leftover features with that, which I think is sort of cool.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Now, we've kind of looked at like the drone as it stands in the lineup, where the Mavic Air 2 fits, and we kind of were discussing where it fits with like the higher end drones. But when we talk about the Mavic Air 2 compared to the Mavic Mini, it is, I would say, double the price, pretty much exactly.
100%.
They offer the Fly More combo with both of these drones, and both of them are basically about half the cost. So the Mavic Air 2 is more expensive, of course. It's twice as expensive. And I think that you're getting more than double the drone with the Mavic Air 2. Like,
think you get
I would
triple the value.
argue, yeah, I would argue that you get a whole lot more value out of the Mavic Air 2. And that's why I've had a couple of people ask me, they're like, well, I've got the Mavic 2 Pro and I want a secondary backup drone, like maybe the Mavic Mini. So should I go with the Mavic Mini or the Mavic Air 2? And you begin to look at it and you're like, okay, well, it'd be great to have a very small Mavic Mini. But then if you're coming from the Mavic 2 Pro, there's going to be a lot of missing features on that drone that you're like, man, I wish I could do like bracketing, or I wish I could shoot panoramas, or I wish that I could find this within the settings. And the Mavic Mini just isn't going to have it. So going from the Mavic 2 Pro to the Mavic Air 2, you're almost upgrading in a couple of senses. But in terms of the Mavic Mini, man, the difference between the Air and the Mini is so huge. And I would recommend anybody get the Air over the Mini.
I agree. I like after seeing this now, I mean, when the Mini first came out, I was sort of disappointed with some of the specifications. I think a lot of people were hoping for what the Air 2 is now. Like that's what we all thought. We wouldn't think DJI would sort of create like a, just a little bit better version of a Spark, right? But they did,
Yep.
and it worked. And I mean, it sufficed for a while because a lot of people were pretty hype about that. And it's a cool drone. It's got a place. It definitely has a place in the market. But now with the Air 2, I mean, you're entering a whole new ball game. I mean, it's sort of, I would say, like a step up beyond like an intermediate drone. I could totally see somebody using this professionally if they had to, though, even though it wasn't like designed. Like I'm interested to see if this is going to replace the Mavic Pro 2 or even the Altair Evo in my bag, because I usually travel around with at least one drone. For the better part of the year, it's been the Mavic 2 Pro, and I flip-flop back and forth now with having the Evo 2s. But if the Air 2 can sort of check all the boxes for me that I need, I mean, that's what's going to be going with me wherever I go.
Well, I'm looking here. The Mini was released on October 30th, 2019. So that is like...
It doesn't feel like... I felt like it was like November or something.
Yeah, I know. Well, technically it is almost November, October 30th. It's the end of the month. But when you think about it, right, that drone came out perfect holiday season. It dropped... There was a month and a half-ish to kind of stir about it before you hit Hanukkah and you hit Christmas and all of those holidays where people are buying gifts for each other. And I think that they captured, obviously, a lot of sales in that time. I could just tell from the views on my channel that there was so many people buying the Mavic Mini. It was so popular. But I feel like after now, we get to around May. It's been about 7-ish months since the Mavic Mini released. And... oh, man, I can't believe it's been 7 months. That's insane. But you think about it, we have about 7 months since this drone released, and that's the perfect upgrade time. Like, everybody who bought the Mavic Mini when it first came out is like, man, I want to upgrade to this drone because I loved starting out the Mavic Mini, but this is the perfect stepping stone. So the way that DJI is going about this is great. And
Smart,
now people who buy the Mavic Air 2 in a couple of months from now might want to upgrade to what DJI has got up their sleeve. I don't know any insider information. Ken doesn't know anything, and there really hasn't been many leaks or rumors about a Mavic 3 coming out.
But why would they do that? Even if they did, like, not to interject like quickly, but like, why would they, like, they just put out this I would say pretty badass drone, right? Like, it hits all the boxes, right? Yeah. Like, they waited 7 months in between, the Mini and obviously now the Air 2. Great timing because a lot of people got stimulus checks. DJI's not stupid. They knew there was extra money floating around, like if it was tax time. Let's release a product when people have a little extra funds in their pocket. Boom. I just don't see them putting out a new drone this close. Like, I bet you closer to Christmas or closer to any point where they can sort of figure out what's going to happen with remote ID. Because if you think about it like this, Mavic Air 3 is definitely going to cost a heck of a lot more than the Air 2 and probably a lot more than the Mavic Air 2 or Mavic 2 Pro. So if people are going to make that investment, they want to know that it's going to be around for a little while. So they're obviously going to wait it out and see what happens with all this. But I wouldn't wait. Like, if you're thinking like, man, I want to wait for the Mavic Air 3. I see those comments all the time and I laugh at them because I would not wait. I would not be waiting. I would jump on a drone now and start flying now, and because you're going to kick yourself in the ass for waiting later.
So you said something about the Mavic Air 3 coming out. I think you meant the Mavic 3, like just whatever it is, the Mavic Pro 3.
Maverick 3. We'll call it Mavic 3 because we don't know if they're gonna. I don't know if they're gonna make 2 versions again like they did.
Yeah,
I don't know how well that. I don't know how well that actually did for them. I mean, I know I bought the Mavic 2 Zoom, but I think over the course of the 2 years, they probably have sold a heck of a lot more Pros than they have the Zooms. If I had to guess.
Well, yeah. Here's something that makes it a little bit uneasy, right? I mean, the Mavic Air 2 is definitely stepping on the Mavic 2 Pro's toes, and with the price gap, I mean, it's pretty substantial. $700-800. I'm looking here. The Mavic Air, the original one, was released in 2018 in January. Right? Yep. So that was, at this point in time, 2 years ago, and it took them over a year to update that Mavic Pro to the Mavic 2 Pro. So while we think like, man, maybe there's a new Mavic 3 on the horizon, we've seen that DJI has held out over a year before the Mavic Air was starting to cannibalize the Mavic Pro sales. And while there was a pretty substantial difference between the two in terms of like transmission quality with OcuSync and Wi-Fi, and of course you had a longer flight time with the Mavic Pro, I feel like DJI can probably hold out for a good amount of time before updating that Mavic Pro. I could be wrong, but I'm just thinking about it. And
you got to think about it like this, man. What do all drones have in common? All of the drones that we fly, all the GPS drones from whether it be DJI or Autel, they are a camera. First and foremost, they are a flying camera. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it in like camera terms, how often are we seeing refreshes on cameras? Maybe once a year. Sometimes a lot longer, because if you think about it, camera tech is one of the few techs that I haven't really seen massive improvements or developments on. It's very far and few between that a camera arrives on the scene and it totally shocks the industry with something really new. So they don't have to really update it. A lot of what like DJI is doing is the smart tech, like the obstacle avoidance, the battery life, which I think personally the biggest upgrade for the Mavic Air 2 actually is the batteries. As long as they don't swell like the Mavic 2 Pro line, and I can get more out of my batteries and make it at least a year, I'd be happy with a year, because I've gone through now 8 batteries on my Mavic 2 Pro. 8 of them. Count them.
It's such a nightmare.
It's terrible.
What did you think of the original Mavic Air? You had it, you flew it. What did you think of it?
I thought it was a noisy beast, man. It really, really was noisy. The gimbal drove me nuts because I never felt like the gimbal was really smooth. There'd be times where I wasn't even in sport mode and the gimbal would just like be losing its mind. There was definitely problems with the gimbal, and that drove me nuts the most. And the 17 minutes of flight time was really underwhelming because you had to be careful of the routes you were taking, and then obviously not having OcuSync. That was a big letdown for such a, I don't know, high-end drone at the time, we'll call it.
Yeah, man. Well, you know what? I think that when I made my video talking about what the Mavic Air 2 kind of was to me, my thoughts behind it, I really was impressed that they were able to improve upon everything about what the original Mavic Air was, because there was 2 complaints I had, the noise and the transmission system. And they could have fixed those 2 things, left everything the same, and man, they would have sold a lot of them, because a lot of people like that design of the Mavic Air. But they took it a step further and introduced so many great new specs that I was almost shocked when I saw it. And the leaks were coming out about what we were going to get, and I really didn't want to believe anything until I saw the official page from DJI. And just scrolling down the page, I was really impressed by this drone. So I think overall it's going to be really good. I think something that's interesting is we're kind of seeing some different shipping times from this drone, and I think it's to be expected with COVID-19 and with the pandemic that we've got going on right now. But when you begin to think about it, like Best Buy and Amazon are shipping their orders out early. In fact, here's something interesting. My buddy Cody ordered from Apple, right? It was a couple of days after he had ordered from DJI, and he's like, hey, look, Apple says that they're shipping right now. So he went and he ordered it from Apple, and it was actually going to deliver at his house on Friday. Like, the package was set to deliver that day from Apple, but then it was like there was a hold placed on the package and saying it wasn't supposed to be delivered until next week. So it was caught before it was delivered. But it's crazy to see that these other manufacturers, or I guess distributors or third parties, are getting the drones out faster than DJI, which means they've had them for a while and are probably breaking the NDA.
Here's NDA is subjective. You got to sign it it's subjective with NDAs, at least for distributors go. As far as DJI goes, and this is what I've heard and talked to other distributors, is that they are starting to migrate a lot of their warehouses and support back overseas. So as to where we have distribution locally here in the States now, we're not going to have distribution like we did in the years past, is because they've been hit with obviously tariffs and taxes and things like that, because it's not an American company. So they've started to migrate, their facilities off site. So I think that has a lot to do with the shipping times that we're seeing. They're fulfilling distributors, and they're relying on distributors because they realize, well, wait a second, we can utilize like a Best Buy, we can utilize a distributor, we can use B&H, and it's not our resources, right? So they're stocking and fulfilling those vendors first. And it makes sense because in the end of the day, it's a savings for them, and they're going to be able to deliver a product at a more affordable cost, and they're cutting the resources that were costing them money here to get the product faster. I don't know if that's 100% it. I mean, that's just what we've seen on the distributor side, is like, well, wait a second, this warehouse is no longer operational. What the heck? It was operational 2 months ago. Now it's not. So COVID sort of changed the landscape of a lot of these companies logistically, I think.
That's really interesting. Here's something, we're going to wrap up here in a couple of minutes, but something interesting I wanted to bring up about the Fly More combo, and I think that this is such a good direction that DJI is going in. They're adding ND filters. Like, thank God.
That's so good.
Why
Who
did
makes
it
them,
take
though?
them so... I don't know, but it's probably DJI themselves. Right? I mean, I've bought DJI made filters before in the past, and people could complain that the glass isn't high quality like you'd get from Polar Pro, but nobody's complaining about the UV filter on the front of the Mavic 2 Pro. Nobody says that with that clear piece of glass on the front, it's going to give you a lesser quality image than something like what you'd shoot with Polar Pro. So why would you then complain if DJI is making
I love the
ND
multi-charger
filter?
too. I love the fact that they're including a multi-charger in that as well for the price. I mean, you like for the price, this is so much bang for your buck, though, if you really think about it. You get 3 batteries, multi-charger, 2 sets of prop, well, 1 extra set of prop, all the chargers, cables, the controller, and ND filters, and you get a carrying pouch. Or what is the cost on this? $988? That's a steal. That's a steal.
Dude, it's a great price. And first of all, they've always included the multi-charger in those Flymore combos, but something that I'm a little bit upset about is that this one seems to only charge 3 batteries, whereas other multi-chargers have charged 4 batteries. So the Phantom was 3, the Mini is 3, the Spark is 3 with the multi-charger, but with the Mavic Air, the Mavic Pro, and the Mavic 2 series, we've had a 4-way multi-charger, which... okay, you get 3 batteries in the Flymore combo. It fits all 3 slots. That's great. But I always liked being able to throw more batteries on there. So that's kind of going to be a pain, but whatever. Just something I noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's like a little nitpick, But I mean, hey, it's just to have a multi-charger is super nice, though. I mean,
I know.
It's going to be pretty cool, though. I can't wait to fly it. I'm sort of jealous of everybody who's flying it now.
Yeah, look, the Mavic Air 2 looks great. Again, I think that where it sits in their lineup is going to really be killer. Let us know what you guys think down in the comment section. If you guys are listening to us over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and if you're not on YouTube and you can't leave a comment, come on over to Twitter. Interact with Ken and I. My handle is at Billy Kyle. His is at Original Dobo. We're always both very active. So definitely stop by if you can. And let us know what you think of the Mavic Air 2. Because you know what? I said something about the Mavic Air 1 being really good and that this was just a total upgrade, and people were like saying I was stupid for thinking the original Mavic Air was any good when I thought it was pretty good.
I thought it was good. And guys, let us know what you think about this format with us introducing video. I think I like this better, and I think you will too.
Yep.
All right, we'll see you in the next one.
See you guys.